Welcome to Rent or Die, the podcast where we break down the truth about real estate, property management, and building wealth. Whether you're a seasoned investor, an apartment building owner, or maybe you're thinking about getting into rental real estate, we've got the insights to help you win in the rental game. Thanks for tuning in. Let's jump into today's episode. All right. Let's talk some shop here, some realty shop. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you today about commissions for residential single family homes, 2 flats, 3 flats, 4 flats, condominiums, and townhomes. So all of your residential real estate sales. So this year, just a note, we'll be charging 1% on the listing side going through the end of August 2026. And so we're going to look around during that time and we're going to see people paying 100% more than that or 150% more than that. I just feel like people make mistakes when they're shopping for services related to home sales. So, so in a nutshell, I'm estimating that if we charge 1%, I'm kind of estimating that the buyer's broker is going to request 2.5% as a cooperating compensation. So who pays for that, right? Is that the home seller? Is that the buyer? And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about right now. Um, if it was the home seller who agreed to pay the buyer's broker, then our commissions would be about 3.5%. Okay. That's still going to be far cheaper than others. And I'll just say, like, think about a $500,000 house. Okay. If I charge you 1% on the listing side, that's $5,000. Okay. And I think that's a lot of money. There's no doubt about it. I think it's closer to the services we provide. I think it becomes a little bit better of a value, I think. Um, but now, if the listing side charges you 2%, that's $10,000. That's twice as much as what we charge. And if they charge you 2.5%, then oh my gosh, you're paying $7,500 more than what we charge. So I mean that's a lot of money, right? Like you're paying more than double by a lot than what we charge. Um, so okay, well let's get into this because there's been some changes recently in across the country. The National Association of Realtors back in March of 2024 settled a huge class action lawsuit for about $418 million. That is a lot of coin, ladies and gentlemen. And so what happened is basically the impact to you guys, if you're selling a home this year or in the near future, the commission structure you're used to might not automatically apply anymore. Commissions are now fully negotiable, and depending on the deal structure, a buyer broker might expect payment directly from the buyer instead of the seller. So in concept, that's really cool because we represent an awful lot of sellers. So thinking of the idea, if we show up and charge the seller 1%, and that's all they're going to have to pay, well, that sounds great. That sounds wonderful. But let's talk about some potential what if scenarios and things like that. And I'll just preface this by saying there's a video of me talking maybe 10 years ago, saying me and my brother are in the car driving. A lot of people commented on my mismatched suits and tie, and I had a striped shirt, and I thought I looked like $1,000,000, but some of the Facebook commenters didn't think so. So, but what we were saying in the video was really commissions are negotiable. Even back then, they were always negotiable. So even before the settlement, there was no law saying that a listing must pay a certain percentage, right? However, the industry norm made seller paid buyer brokerage commissions the de facto standard. The settlement reinforces now that both seller and buyer side commissions may be negotiated. So, so I want to make that clear. All commissions are negotiable. I want to emphasize that. No matter what I say in this podcast, all commissions are negotiable. Okay, so just don't assume the standard to buyer's agent role will be paid by the seller. And so that's one of those things, if you're selling a home, that we want to clarify up front. When we sit down and come up with the price for your home, we're going to talk some strategy about the commission. And it's really important to do it up front, because then we know how to use that. Like, are we going to um, uh, share on our private website that we're paying a commission? How are we gonna handle that, right? So if the seller doesn't agree to pay the buyer broker, the buyer in effect might have to write a check. Okay. So because sellers are no longer automatically offering to pay buyer's agent commissions via the listing, if a seller opts not to pay, the buyer has to pay their broker out of their own pocket, or negotiate with the seller, or the seller side to cover that. So this becomes particularly problematic in certain financing scenarios. So that's why you want to be smart and know what you're doing as you go into the deal, because you don't want to get less offers. You don't want people to come look at the home, be in love with it, and then just like back out when they learn that they're going to have to come out of pocket to pay their broker. And really understanding the impact of the deal is strategic, and it's really smart to know upfront. Like we always say, our real estate services are for intelligent people who want to save money. And so if you think about it, uh, there is a chance that, let's say on a $500,000 house, okay, if the buyer is 10% down, that's $50,000. Now, if they are being asked to pay their broker, or they actually end up paying their broker, that could be a significant chunk of change. That could be $12,500 to them. So if they were coming to approach a $500,000 deal, having saved up their 10% down payment, and now they're going to have to pay 12,500 of that. Well, now they only have $37,500 to put down, as opposed to the 50. So now their lender might look at them and say, well, hey, your rate's going to change. And when the rate changes, what happens? The home becomes less affordable. So then that's where, like, being competitive with other homes in the market, there's an impact, right? Which home is more affordable for me to buy, right? And certainly we know that that doesn't apply to people who maybe are going to pay cash for the home, put 50% down. It's not as big of a deal. Or people who are, pat on cash, that type of thing. So we want to account for it, though. We want to talk about it up front, because we're smart people, right? We're not going to not talk about it and then get to the end and the seller say, "Well, I'm not paying that." If that's what the seller wants to say, then I'd love to talk about that way up front, so I can explain the ramifications of it, instead of whenever it happens. Like, hey, this guy might go, because then it feels different, right? It feels like pressure. So yeah, if you don't want to pay for the buyer's broker, then we talk about that up front, and then you just have to understand the ramifications of that. Uh, Basically, what if scenarios, right? Good strategy. Now, I'll tell you something else that has changed, is that uh, in Illinois, there's specific buyer agency agreements, and it really wasn't so common back in the day. You would just take people out, show them houses. They wouldn't really have to hire you as a broker. You were just out showing them houses, right? Sometimes we would have them sign exclusive buyer's agency agreements, things like that. But it was usually, that's kind of unusual. Nowadays, though, it's in the code of ethics that in order for any realtor to show a home, they must have already had the buyer sign a buyer's agency agreement outlining what their compensation is going to be. Okay, so that's a big difference. And then at that time, the buyer agrees to pay their broker, largely in the event the seller says, "I'm not going to pay for it." Um, so that creates all kinds of circumstances, right? Um, if if a seller doesn't offer any buyer's agent compensation, and there is a chance that they may see fewer offers or even fewer buyer agents showing the property. I'll tell you, one buyer's agent might come through and make an offer with their client and learn that there's no compensation. And they'll remember that too next time they have a buyer looking in the area. They'll be like, "Yeah, I don't know, I'm not even going to get paid for that." Or maybe they'll talk to their client and say, "Hey, so before we look at this house, you guys are going to have to come out of pocket." We don't know what happens. We don't know what people talk about. And so I just feel like and I want to talk a little bit about that video. So I was riding around with me and my brother in the car, and we were talking about how commissions are negotiable. And so what would happen is we would actually go knock on people's doors, and we've had sellers tell us like, "Hey, another broker came by here, and I told them that you guys are only charging me 3.5%, and they said what you're doing is illegal." And we're like, "What?" Like, that's insane. That's highly unethical that would be told to. So I don't know. It kind of seemed like the wild, wild west. And I'm personally glad that the clarifications that are being made today are coming into effect, and I think they're good for consumers and brokers alike. So there's something else too, is that like we're no longer to put the compensation on the MLS, and that's why you didn't have as many buyer's agency agreements, because I could just log onto our system before I showed a house and see that Jane Smith is paying out 2.5%, and that was basically a guarantee that I would get paid that money for bringing the buyer. And so now you're not even allowed to do that anymore. So in any event, yeah, I mean, if you think about a buyer that is now, only has 37,500 down instead of the 50,000 down on this $500,000 house, that home might, now be unaffordable for them. That might change their interest rates, which impacts the affordability. I mean, it creates a host of issues. So let's account for it up front. That's really the bottom line of what I'm getting to. The lawsuit and settlement have changed the baseline assumption about who pays a buyer's agent, how that payment is disclosed, and when it must be agreed to. It's no longer set it and forget it. It is definitely something that has to be handled and negotiated and documented and planned for throughout the deal. So expect that. I just want to say again, this year we're charging 1% for sellers, 1%, and then whatever the buyer's agreement, and the what we're going to pay the buyer, what the seller agrees to pay the buyer, doesn't agree to pay the buyer, that is to be determined and negotiated. But for us, our offer to you is 1% commission on the listing side. So we think it's going to be the best deal in town. We've done an analysis and looked around, and we kind of suspect that that's definitely going to be the best pricing out there. So if you want to save some money this year, don't throw your money away. Don't believe the other misconception that when I worked for a national brokerage, I remember the national brokerage gave me so many resources, and they said, "Oh, we have this relocation company, and we're donating to this charity, and we're doing all this stuff." And in reality, none of that means anything for the home seller, because we take the home, we take pictures, we prepare it for the market, we make it look beautiful. And when we put that home on the multiple listing service, the multiple listing service syndicates to Remax's website, Century 21, Baird and Warner, Coldwell Banker, all the big companies, right? On their website, they accept the MLS listings because they want their buyers to find them. They want to use the homes that are on the MLS so that when buyers are looking online, that the buyer clicks and contacts their company to represent them as a buyer's broker. So that has little to do with the seller. The seller, you get the signage outside. You're all over the internet. You've got the thing presented beautifully. Everything looks good and is organized. And then we give you this world-class representation backed by 20 years of experience. You're going to do perfectly fine. Do not overpay for real estate services this year. Please save yourself some money. You deserve to keep your equity, and we're going to charge you just a very reasonable amount. And because we are in Westmont, if you happen to be selling a home in Westmont, check out our podcast number 2 that we had put out. I talk about how we love Westmont and we are 100% familiar with the area. We know the resources, we know the dining, we know the shopping, we know where the golf courses are, where the fitness centers are, what's going on at Ty Warner, what's going on downtown Westmont all 365 days a year. And so when a buyer calls or a buyer's broker, we want to tell them about the town. We want to tell them about CUSD 201. We want to tell them about our school districts and how just awesome they are, and everything that's available to their kids if they have kids, and everything great about the town for those who have kids and those who don't as well. So, all right, cool. Well, thanks a lot, you guys, and we'll catch up soon. Thanks. All right, that's it for this episode of Rent or Die. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who needs to hear this. Got a wild landlord or tenant story? Hit me up. I'd love to feature it on the show. You can email it to vetshopcustomercare@gmail.com. Again, that's vetshopcustomercare@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.